Sometimes we don't have access to an IDE on a remote system. We don't have access to a GUI or UI. We need to troubleshoot or debug the code from the command line or terminal. PDB is the Python debugger, which is built in for Python. So if we need to debug on a remote system, we can use PDB to do that. Whereas in an IDE, if we're debugging locally, we could use the IDE and walk through the code and step over and click on things to do that. But if we're at the terminal or a command prompt, we have to use some PDB commands to do that, which achieves the same thing. So how we use PDB, again, Python debugger, PDB Python debugger, is we import it at the top of the code. It's built into Python, so we can do that. We just say import PDB, and then wherever we want to set a breakpoint, we say PDB, and then call this set trace method of PDB. So pdb.setTrace. That will set a breakpoint for us. And then we have various commands that we can use as we're in that. We can show the current location in the code, or go to the next line of code, step into a function call, continue to the next breakpoint. And this should be familiar terminology to you. Somewhat, this is a great reminder from our debugging in our IDEs. Similar terminology. We can print the value of an expression or queue for quit. So this is a good little reference sheet for you. Let's now look at it in action. So I'm going to open a folder to show you side by side here this code. Let's open our personality test that we used earlier in the course. So we have some code here that we can debug. This is 100 lines or so. Now I'm just going to use this to show you where we're at in the code. Let's open up now a terminal. I've got a terminal here. I'm in the same location as this file. You see our personality test. So let's edit with Vim. I'll teach you more on Vim later in the course. Hope you stick around for that. Very powerful editor. Personality test. And we first have to import PDB. Okay, now that that's done, we can set a breakpoint. Let's just come down here and set a breakpoint after this input is taken. Let's say this is where we want to start debugging. So pdb.setTrace. We'll call that setTrace method of PDB. And we'll set another breakpoint right before we print out our personality type. Whoops. Okay, I'll save that file. So let's pretend that our terminal here is a remote system. We don't have access to a GUI on it, a graphical user interface. We just have the terminal. So we need to type our commands. So here we are. Let's run our personality test. So welcome to the Myers-Briggs personality test. Here we see we just ran this line of code. It printed that out for us. Enter the number of your choice. When you're at a party, do you interact with many or few? So we just printed out this part of the code as well. And we're waiting for this input. We have not entered PDB yet. We have not entered the Python debugger. Let's hit 1. Now the next line of code after I put that input was this pdb.setTrace. So now we're in the special PDB mode. We're in the Python debugger now. Remember, that sets our breakpoint. So now we're in the debugger. We can use these commands. If we go back to our slide, list, next, step, continue, print, quit. We can use these commands now in the Python debugger. So we could do next to go to the next line. So we just said if answer equals 1, extroversion plus equals 1. So we are right here in the code. L will list where we're at in the code. As we see, line 25. That's where we're at, line 25. Next, we'll continue moving. Print, are you more? Let's do L again. See, now we're on line 30 because we exited that if conditional. Let's go look at our cheat sheet again. We can step into function calls. Continue, we'll go to the next breakpoint. P will print the value of an expression or a variable. So let's see what variables we have here. We have an answer variable. Let's see what that is. We could do P and then our variable answer. That value is 1 because if you recall, if we scrolled up here, we entered 1 for this question. When you're at a party, do you? And we entered 1. So that's the current value of answer. Do we have any other variables? Extroversion. Let's print extroversion. That's 1 because we set the value of plus equal 1 when our answer was 1. What's the value of introversion? 0 because that's still set at 0 from prior in our code. Let's go to our last breakpoint. If you remember here, we set 2 breakpoints. We set another breakpoint at the very bottom of our code right before we print your Myers-Briggs personality type. We set PDB set trace there. So if we hit C, as we go over to our cheat sheet, that will continue to the next breakpoint. We'll executing the code as normally. So let's hit C. So we exited our Python debugger. Now we have to enter more questions. And we ran into an error. Let's see. I think that this code may not run all the way. I may have modified this. Let's set our set trace a little bit higher. Let's set it just up here somewhere. Oh yeah, we did have a sys exit here. I don't know why I had that there. We'll delete that and resume our breakpoint here actually. So let's create that other breakpoint. And now back to, let's try this again. Python personality test. 1, okay, we hit PDB, let's just continue. Or we could queue for quit. We just quit the whole thing. Let's run it again. 1, okay, let's continue to our next breakpoint. So we're going to continue executing the code until we hit our next breakpoint. Let's just enter our numbers here, our values. All right, now we hit our other personality or our other breakpoint. Right before this, your Myers-Briggs personality type is that, which is right here. So we are on this line. We haven't executed it yet because we set our trace right here. Let's prove that with L to list. Line 117. That's where we are. So if we hit next, we'll continue executing. And let's do one more. There we go. Oh, there it was already. Your personality type is ENTJ. So that's an overview, guys, of PDB. Again, we could envision this was a remote system. We didn't have access to an IDE. We had to work at the terminal, but we needed to debug. So got a useful cheat sheet here. We can import PDB, then set trace to set breakpoints, and then navigate through those breakpoints, view variables, regular debugging tasks that we would use. So very useful to know about this built-in Python debugger as we're troubleshooting.